Hello and welcome, and I'm really excited today. I thought we would take the opportunity to speak with a former Major League player here in Boston. You can talk about iconic teams. For me as a kid, it was the 75 team, 86, the Heartache. But when we start talking about Boston Red Sox post-year 2000, 2004, 2007, were iconic years for me as a parent, obviously for me as a fan. And over the course of our baseball travels with my sons, particularly at Cressy Performance in Hudson, Mass., we were able to connect and run into and get the opportunity to meet today's guest, Kevin Youkilis, formerly of the Boston Red Sox. I believe, Kevin, from 04 to 12, and then there was a White Sox and a team from the Bronx that I don't want to mention. But thank you so much for taking the time to join me today.
Oh, my pleasure.
You know, Kev, I can remember sitting at the desk with Tyler and, Tyler being starry-eyed and having the opportunity to meet you and Curt Schilling. And I want to start there. What is your earliest memory of, man, I really want to be a college player or a professional player? At what age did that kind of go off in your head as a young baseball player?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. You don't it's so funny the older you get, you have little pieces of your past that, and you hold on to those. And some of them over time you start, it starts dissipating. But, for me, I don't know what the age was, but when I was younger, I'd always go to the University of Cincinnati baseball camps and love that part of it. Back then, too, when I was younger, they were in the same conference as Florida State. And I remember Eduardo Perez being on Florida State and playing at UC and wow, Florida State, they're like a powerhouse. It's great. I always had dreams and aspirations. Arizona State was like the school to go to. So I was like, man, if I could ever go play at Arizona State, that would be amazing. So for me, it started to develop probably in my teen years where I really wanted to go play college baseball, and it was a dream. But the one great lesson, and I don't know if it came naturally, was I can't play college baseball unless I'm the best on my team right now. Or how do I compete, the day to day? And I didn't even know I was doing it. And we talk about a lot, in life, live in the moment. Don't look too far ahead. You can set your calendar and schedule, but you can't plan for what's going to happen other than what you're doing in the now. So for me, it was always just trying to get better, trying to grind out, trying to do all the little things to improve my game. So I would have the opportunity to make a really good travel ball team. I remember when I was 12 years old, I was on a travel ball team, and it just wasn't a really good. It just wasn't a good situation. The coach was, the coach was a little bit of a mess. I was playing left field versus the infield, and that was my first, realization. Wow, I didn't have that. I mean, I enjoyed it with the players and my teammates because they were friends, some of them, but the overall experience wasn't that great. So I went back to. We called it Knot Hole in Cincinnati. It wasn't a Little League affiliate. Only Hamilton, the area of Hamilton, had Little League, which they became our state champions when Aaron Cook, the pitcher who we faced in the 07 World Series, he was on my team when I was 14 when I went back to travel ball. That area was the only one that had Little League. So I went back to Knot Hole in 13 and then made this team again after that because I was like, you know what, I'm ready to go travel ball. And it was an amazing year. We won the AAU World Series down in Cocoa Beach, Florida. And for me, it was just it was the right timing to be on a better travel ball team. And I didn't play at first. I sat the bench, pitched a little bit, but didn't get the opportunities to hit as much. And I remember one car ride with my dad that forever will sit with me. I was crying. I was in the back seat. I was in the back seat. I don't know why I was in the back seat. Maybe I was just pouting. And I started crying, and my dad stopped the car. He pulled over, and he said, "That's enough. I've had enough of you being upset." He said, "You wanted to try out for this team." He's like, "You could have gone and played with your friends, but you wanted to try out for this team. So you have two options. I can take you off this team and put you back with your buddies in the Little League, or you can suck it up and find a way to show to them that you are good enough to play." And I remember that conversation, and my dad always had Cadillacs. He was a diamond salesman, traveling guy, drove those things like 200,000 miles. He worked his butt off. And it stuck with me for the rest of my life. And I was super thankful for that conversation, even though it was a tough conversation. And I still remember the look on my dad's face and how he was very stern with me about it. And from there on out, I just realized everything you do is you have to try to get a little bit better. And I luckily took that advice and ran with it and just kept getting better. But then I found myself, I got cut, right before that team, I got cut in junior high when I was a 7th grader. And the coach still to this day laughs it off, saying, like, I cannot believe I cut you on that team. And then later down the road, I got cut when I was 16 years old. There's been a lot of things so I always questioned, right? Am I good enough? Because other people are saying you're not good enough. But I would still go out there every single day and just keep playing and playing and playing. And I didn't get the looks, So like in the back of your head, like, am I going to be able to play college? I don't know. But I'm doing well. I'm hitting well. I'm playing better than most other people, but I'm just not getting recognized. I was a little more of a chubbier kid, a little fatter kid and stuff like that. So usually back then that was like the biggest knock, right? It was all on body type and you got to have a certain body type to be a great athlete. And then unfortunately, after I was drafted and down the road, they're like, oh, no, we want to draft the best of the best based on, how they handle the bat, how they get on base and all those things. So for me, I didn't know when that time was, but I always had that dreams and aspirations. And it came down to the very last UC baseball winter, camp that I went to, where Coach Cleary was there, and he called me after I left and said, hey, we'd like to offer you something here at University of Cincinnati. And the other one was Butler University. So I said, if I was a guard in basketball, those schools were like amazing, right? UC was like number one, like when I was in college, and Butler was always good, but baseball programs weren't great. So for me, I didn't really know, and I just kept grinding it out until that opportunity came where the University of Cincinnati offered me that scholarship, and I took it, and it was the best decision of my life.
In hindsight, how did your youth experience as a player and maybe your dad's influence help you in today's world, now that you're a dad of a 10 and a 12-year-old and they're about to enter the world of, youth baseball, travel baseball, et cetera?
Yeah, there was a lot of different things that happened in my youth that I saw from parenting, from coaching, little things that you like everything. You take the good, you take the bad. What was good about it? What was bad about it? For me, some of the bad that I saw were, the parents that were kind of mentally abusive to their children, would just beat them down. Parents that just weren't, present a lot of times. To parents that had, drinking problems, to gambling problems, to all kinds of stuff. And then you realize how much of an influence you have as a parent on your children. I think the biggest thing that you have to learn, and what I've learned today, is there are times where you're always going to be the toughest critic of your child.
Oh, yeah.
Other kids, right? So sometimes you're going to have a reaction. The key is, after that reaction in the car or whatever, you apologize. You talk through it. You give them a big hug and say, I love you. That was dad with his coach's hat on. That wasn't dad with his dad hat on. And, and it's tough. It's not easy to coach your kids at times because your expectations for them are a little higher. And so for me, the one thing, my dad didn't coach me as much as he coached my brother, my older brother, or my younger brother. But my dad was huge in the influence. My dad built a batting cage in our backyard with wood and mulch, made a concrete pad for a little bit, and we put like a rug down on it. At that time, we didn't have the AstroTurf, and just him doing that. And he didn't have a lot of time on his hands because he was traveling a lot. And for him to do that, it was such a big deal to me now, looking back, of how much my dad cared and how much my dad kind of let me, pave my own way in a lot of ways. But he was always there to support me. My mom too. My mom was endlessly taking us to and from practices. And I had parents that they were supportive, very supportive. And I think that's the key to it all, is don't look at every at bat, every error made in the field as do or die. Like, think of it as like, oh, it's a teachable moment. How do we get through it? For my son too, I always talk about, it's like, hey, it's okay. I don't care if you make the error. It's like, hey, on that one, what did you do? And I want him to be able to tell me what he think happened and did wrong. And then we talk through it. Hey, look, you got to come get that ball a little bit more. Hey, you got to come back on that ball a little bit more. And so for me, it's not mad about that they didn't make the play. It's the teaching lessons, that the how and the why. And so when that play happens again and they make it, that's when you just throw up your arms like, yes, like you get so excited. And enthusiasm for these kids when they do it right after the teachable moment is the most important part to me. I've learned that the hard part for parents is their understanding of the game is at, let's say they're 40 to 50 years old. They have that many years of watching baseball, seeing baseball. But what do they watch? They watch Major League Baseball.
Right.
So their thought process of how it should be done is at such a high level that you have to dumb it down and get back down to the understanding of where the player is at from an educational standpoint, from a physical standpoint. It's like when kids are learning multiplication and division, you're not teaching them algebra.
Right.
So that's what's happening a lot in baseball. What I see is too many people are trying to give too many talking points that are so high level and trying to infiltrate that into a young mind when we should be just trying to teach them, okay, they're at this step, right? We got to get to the next step and then get to the next step and get to the next step. They're trying to jump all the way to the top of the stairs just like that. And their expectations are up here when they need to be down at the lower level where that child is currently in baseball.
I think what's really important, the takeaway here, and when I'm talking with parents, I always talk about until you're in a batter's box with the mindset of a 12-year-old or a 10-year-old, first of all, we're talking about weight of expectation. When you're a 10 or 12-year-old, you're trying to make your teammates happy, your coach happy, obviously mom and dad and family and friends. It's hard to be in a batter's box at 10 through 12, 10 through 13. There's a lot of innate inner pressure just to put a ball in play. That's I agree wholeheartedly. We're trying to teach algebra and calculus to kids that, from a hitting perspective, are just at that addition and subtraction. And I always remember the greatest quote I was ever given. My dad was a truck driver. He wasn't a baseball player, and he wasn't an athlete. And I remember him saying, a coach of mine said, just make contact. And when I got home, he kind of looked at me and he said, look, I want you to understand one thing. He said, that pitcher is not just trying to throw the ball over the plate. He's trying to get you out. So if you're going to make contact with authority. Swing the bat like you want to punish the baseball, because he's trying to punish you as a hitter. You got to want to punish the baseball. So I learned at a very young age, if I was going to swing that bat, I wanted to swing it with authority, to put in a ball in play with authority. Can you talk a little bit about, you're seeing this now as a dad. Hitting is a hard thing to do. Round bat, round ball is moving, got an umpire. There's a lot of variables, sun, all kinds of stuff going on. Can you just talk about simplifying? For parents, a lesson isn't like a medication. It's not going to instantly cure what's ailing your young hitter. Hitting is a whole bunch of moving parts, and to simplify it, see ball, hit ball, put it in play with authority. Can you talk about that from a parent's perspective to other parents that are in that youth baseball space?
Yeah, the big thing for me is what I talk about with my 12-year-old and my 10-year-old, and being a 12-year-old, you're a little more advanced than a 10-year-old. Both are good players. That they take direction really well in a lot of ways. They get frustrated when I keep trying to explain something to them, just like every kid with their parent.
Right.
And I think for me, what I try to get most out of them is I try to explain to them the same way that I would go about at bats is, listen, it's called controlled violence, right? You have to be under control, but then you create the violence with your swing. So when you're ready to go, you go, right? And that is before you get to 2 strikes. And then with 2 strikes, especially what's hard at the younger levels is the strike zone. The strike zone is really big. So, it's hard when kids are disciplined. Like my youngest, like he has a really good knack. Both my kids have a really good knack for the strike zone. Hopefully I pass that on to them just through DNA and I don't have to worry about it. But they do a really good job because I talk about, listen, I want you to be aggressive, but the pitch has to be up in the zone, and it's got to be something that you can hit hard on a line. If you get a strike, that doesn't mean anything in that at bat. So My son this past weekend, my 12-year-old, he had 2 pitches called on him up and away, not good strikes. Like they might be, little league type, whatever, 12-year-old strikes. But, he got those and, he was like, oh, he gave that little look like, man, I can't hit that pitch. Like it's whatever. And he got a ball and then he fouled off a pitch and then he hits a rope into the right center gap. Field was really big, got a, home run out of it. And I was like, that is the teachable moment right there, guys. And the funny thing is they come back in the dugout and I was like, hey, guys. And none of the kids were listening to me and I got mad. I was like, all right, you guys got it. Never mind. So like I walked away. And so our other coaches after the game, and one of our other coaches is Danny Putnam, who played a little bit in the major league level, played at Stanford. And he's like, listen, I got you after the game. I'll explain it to him. And so he kind of said, listen, you have a coach here that played at the highest level that is trying to teach you guys things. Open up your ears. When he asks for your attention, all he's trying to do is give you advice, right? He's trying to get you better. And my teachable moment was, guys, don't freak out. The game of baseball it's not based on time. It's based on strikes, balls, outs, all those things. You're never out of the at-bat because when you get to 2 strikes, it's not a death sentence. Right. It's not, oh my God, I only have 1 more strike and I'm striking out. It's no, this pitcher has to throw another pitch. And that might be the best pitch of the entire at-bat is with 2 strikes. Pitchers make mistakes, especially when you're young. They throw the ball, they're trying to throw it away, it goes over the inner half and you crush the ball. So I was trying to explain to him is don't worry about what happens on pitch 1, pitch 2, and all that. You're still in it. But we also got to be ready to hit the best pitch early on that we individually hit well. And the hard part is a lot of kids don't know what pitch they hit well. Because all they're, like you said, they're in there's parents watching, there's people talking, screaming, and they get wrapped up in the moment and they're just overly aggressive. The one talking point I always say is like, I watch a pitcher and I'm like, I can see that his ball stays up at the top of the zone. So I'm always like, hey guys, if you see this ball and it's at your hands, let it go. It's going to stay up there. It's going to be above the strike zone. And we had some good at bats this past weekend because a lot of kids really harnessed in on that. And I think that is one of the keys is just little talking points. And I think one of the big things that I see with other coaches is, hey, you're doing this, you're doing that, you got to do that. They say 3 different things. And now the kid's like getting back in the box. I'm like, oh man, this is not good. I was like, this is good for us because I know this kid is just he's thinking about his hands, he's thinking about his stride, he's thinking about all that stuff. The big thing is one talking point as a coach on the field. Do not try to have 3 different adjustments during the game. Practice before the game. You can talk about all these things. And then what you have to implement right before you go, hey, I always tell them, like, listen, like if I we're sitting there flipping or I'm doing something like, hey, look at this. I said, when they leave that thing after they're done flips, like, listen, don't worry about what we just worked on. Go out there, compete, see the ball, hit the ball. Keep it simple.
Can you talk a little bit about, from a parent's perspective, when I'm visiting a tournament or a game, I hear a lot of instruction from the stands. I hear a lot of parents yelling, not only to their athletes, but to athletes on the team. Can you just talk about the importance for parents to allow coaches to actually coach? And then after the game, parents can kind of talk to their athletes. But during the game, it's imperative and very important to allow athletes to be totally zoned in with their coaches.
Yeah, I think the best thing is unless you're giving your kid a water or some kind of food or something like that, nutrients or something in the dugout, a lot of it is, hey, let the coaches coach. and you paid a bunch of money for these coaches to coach. So, I don't get paid. But, I think on a lot of teams, you're paying to play on these teams. And, if the too many voices is always a problem. When you have too many voices in your ear, the next thing you know is you're thinking about all the voices versus, and you're not even seeing the pitch, or you're on the mound and you're thinking about all these things versus, hey, I'm just focused on that mitt and trying to hit that mitt, right? And keeping things simple. The more simplified you are, right, in the way you go about it as a baseball player, when you're in the zone, you're not thinking. It's everything's so simple. The parents need to have the same objective when they show up to the game: is keep it simple. Positive cheering. Hey, you're all right. Good. Hey, you're all right. Let's go. You got this. Instead of, hey, throw strikes. Well, no, I always say it's like, yeah, no strikes or throw strikes. I'm like, that is rhetorical. They're all trying to throw strikes, right? The big thing is how you can get them back to throwing strikes. And that's where the coach is giving a pointer. Hey, listen, you're flying open. That's why, the ball you're missing over here because you're flying open, or you're closed off, or, hey, use the mound, use the gravity takes you versus striding out. And that's why you're throwing it high, is because you're not thinking down off the mound. So a little talking point like that can get the kid back into throwing strikes. The negative of throw strikes, it sounds like you are demanding something from them. It's like clean the dishes. That is simple. They know how to clean a dish. But throwing strikes is not that easy, especially when they're in front of all their peers, and all these people behind. There's no more lonelier place than to be on the bump in baseball. So I think the biggest thing with parents and the number one thing I have to say, parents, stop yelling balk from the stands. It is absolutely the worst thing in youth baseball right now. The discretion of the umpire is the key. It's like holding in the NFL. They can call a hold almost every single play. But if you listen to an NFL referee and why they don't call a hold on every play is there's a hold that doesn't dictate anything with the play. So therefore, they have the flag ready to throw. The play gets off nothing and they don't call it. It's the same thing with balks with little kids. If it's egregious or a kid gets picked off because of it, I have no problem with the coach saying, hey, look, he did this. It happened this weekend. I had a 17-year-old kid coach that was like, hey, man, that's a balk in the first inning. And I was like, come on, man. I was sitting right there on a bucket, and he got snarky with me. He had no idea who I was, which was great. And I was ready to, and he got chirpy with me and called me bro. And it was the most disrespectful thing I've ever seen from a 17-year-old kid, which we can get into in a lot of different discussions. And I think that comes from a lot of the stuff that guys like Trevor Bauer have implemented, the social media thing where it's cool to be a jerk. It's not cool to be a jerk. There's a respect factor. He said, oh, we're not friends. I was like, what are you talking about? We're not friends. What? I was like, this is about the kids. This isn't about me and you. Right. And so I kind of let it go. I was stewing a little bit. I was a little hot, but about these balks is it's so important for these kids to learn through how not to balk. Instead of if you want to win a game because of a balk at 10 and 12 years old, you are in baseball for the wrong reasons. Amen. I want my kids to swing the bat. I want them to run the bases, to learn the game. I don't want them to advance to each base because of balk calls. If it's egregious, totally fine. If the kid doesn't come set, whatever, but we've had some really good umpires that do a really good job. I've talked to them. Saw a manager get thrown out of a game because he was arguing balks when it wasn't a balk at all. And a lot of people just don't know the rules. And I think that's the hardest part is parents, do not go there to yell and scream about things you think when really you might not know it. Educate yourself. It's okay to keep learning as you get older. And there's a lot of things along the way that if that was your kid out there, how would you feel if everyone's screaming balk at your kid, right? You get defensive, you get angry. So do unto others what you want done to your kids. Allow these umpires to call the game. And when coaches and parents are yelling balk, like I am so mad. It's like me getting hit by a pitch on purpose. Like it enrages me because I've seen it. There's Balks, and I sit there first base coaching. I don't say a word because I let the umpires do it because it's not that big of a deal. And I do not want to embarrass any kid out there. For me, it's like, hey, I went to a coach this past week and I was like, hey, this guy was calling Balks on because he wasn't coming set, but then he was moving his foot he was kind of rotating his foot on the rubber. And I went over to the coach. I'm like, hey, listen, he's doing this on the rubber. I just don't want them to call a balk. Just make sure to tell him to keep that foot a little bit more still, going up and down versus turning side to side. Because for me, that's what I care about. I care about the kid, even kids on other teams. I don't know if that kid's going to be on my team someday. I don't know if he's going to be, on my son's team, travel ball, high school. Our job is to make sure that, yes, we teach our kids how to win and how to go out there and compete, but it's all about all the kids having fun, getting better, and less tears on the field about being embarrassed because adults can't control themselves.
And on that topic, I really want to kind of get this. This is a question that you just kind of touched on. I want to kind of expand on it a little bit if I can. And that is, when I was a kid playing baseball, the whole unwritten rule thing, that was something that was taught by older players. And I grew up with guys like Tony Clignaro, Rico Petrocelli. They lived in my neighborhood. And there were certain things you never celebrated. You didn't do bat flips. You didn't do it. Let the kids play. Let the kids have fun. I get all that. But there's a certain threshold, in baseball that I think we're approaching more so now than ever with regard to social media and videos and so forth. At the travel ball level, why has it become so much about the me and less about the we? Meaning, okay, I hit a 2-run backside double, we're up, and now I got to go to second base. I got gyrations. I'm ripping equipment off of me and I'm pointing at people. It just seems like we're really overemphasizing at the younger ages the me, the successes of the me versus the successes of the we. Is that something that you think is growing and getting worse, or is that just going to be a part of the game from this point forward?
Yeah, it's definitely getting worse. It's these kids, young ball players mimic MLB players, and that is just the truth of the matter. Like, I've come to accept some of it, right? Like, I'm like, the bad, like I was broadcasting for the 3 years with Nesson, and the bat flips and stuff like that. This is my take on it. It's not my game anymore. I'm not a coach. I'm not a player. It's their game. In MLB, it's how they want to go about it. I disagree with a lot of people that are fighting against, and like they want it a certain way, but they're not willing to put in the time to coach at if you're going to moan and groan and you want change, you have to go make that change. Going on social media and yelling and this disrespect. It's like, well, how do you change it? Right. You're just moaning and groaning online about these players. My big belief is this, like, there's certain things you can change and there's certain things you can't change. I think you have to figure out, to me, like one of our kids did one of these signs. We're down, we're losing. And he gives one of these after he strikes out a kid. And I went to him and I pulled him aside. I said, hey, let me ask you a question, buddy. If you struck out and that guy did that, would you be upset? He goes, yes. I said, there you go. So why are you doing it to it? Because I know the kid and I know he'd be really mad if some kid did that to him. And I said there, but that's the lesson, buddy. Like, you have to understand you're doing something that you would hate someone else doing to you. And that's being a hypocrite. And, explaining that to him. And he's like, oh, he kind of gets it. The big thing is this. I don't mind, like, the emotions on the field. I don't mind as long as it's unity. Like, for me, I love when the kids come back to the dugout. Let's stop doing it at home plate. Let's start doing it in front of our dugout where it's a team aspect. Let's, if there is a thing at second base where all that, it should be quick. It shouldn't be like 5 different things. I mean, we have gang signs being thrown up. We have all kinds of stuff. And sometimes I just sit there and laugh because, I mean, if I don't laugh at it, I'm going to get really angry at it. But I basically tell the guys like this: everything we do is about the team aspect. and what and if other teams are doing stuff, the problem is then it becomes confrontational. I
Right.
think a lot of the problems is people are like, oh, well, it's going to be less confrontational because everyone's doing it. I'm like, it hasn't changed anything. People still get their feelings hurt, and we're still saying dust us because of emotions. So for me, how I'm going to handle it, how I'm going to go about it, I think that the key for me is really just, getting these kids to love the game. And I think we're in a tough situation with sports in general. We have the NIL, the transfer portals. I've always believed, and I've always said this for years before the NIL, I do believe that college athletes should get paid based on what the programs make, and I've always said, I don't know. And I always said, I'm ignorant to how, but I know the current situation that's happening has created a lot of problems. It's creating a lot of problems for high school kids getting opportunities to play in college. It's creating an absolute dramatic issue with coaches having to recruit their own players. They've already recruited them. They're there, and then they got to keep recruiting them. And it's becoming pro ball in college. And so I think for me, the III thing is come about because, let's be honest, I mean, there's a lot of parents that don't have the financial means, and they see this as an avenue for their child to bring in a little bit of cash so they have a better opportunity down the road. So I think we're kind of in this, the Wild West of the individual with the NIL money and going to colleges and transferring and playing on multiple travel ball teams. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's changed since we were younger. I think we're just in a different time. I think we saw kids, I mean, you probably saw with Tyler, the kids jump from team to team. They maybe got offered a little bit of something to play for that team. It's just gotten a little bit to a higher level now. And you're never going to be able to get it as a whole. You're just hoping that you can create teams that have more of the we attitude that in the long run is going to help build them to be better young men. That's for me, is as a coach, if I'm not making them better young men that love the game and teaching them the game where they can become great coaches someday, because everyone's career ends. It can be high school, it can be college, it can be pro ball. It always ends. And if you love the game, eventually you're going to be teaching the game onto the youngest generation. So creating good young men that learn about the game, because it's always, to me, this is the key. Good coaching from bad coaching. Good coaching teaches kids how to learn the game within the game. Every little inch you gain is not on your exit velocity. It's not how hard you throw. It's covering a base. It's understanding that, hey, in this situation, this is what we're doing. And just fundamentally sound, right? The best players that get to the highest level have those strong fundamentals and foundations before the other players have them. And that's why they move up quicker than somebody that has their own talent. Because if you have the same amount of talent, but you have a high baseball IQ, you give yourself a better chance to have more growth. And for me, I think that's the biggest thing. And it's really hard in today's world, because parents also want the best for their children, and some of them don't understand what the best is for their children in the game of baseball.
Well, last question, and this has been fantastic. The amount of information that you've been able to provide, I feel, for parents and young coaches, I think is really exceptional. But, what I can remember, and I want to ask this as your opinion as a parent, not as a former major league player. I can remember the best learning time or learning moments that for both of my sons, but particularly Tyler, were when I was coaching college baseball and we would be on the bus coming home. And my boys watched a lot of college baseball, live. And then on the bus home, Tyler would say, why did you do this? Or what made that guy do this? And so can you just talk about the power of watching high-level baseball? Not necessarily a million games or a million practices, but the power of watching the higher levels of baseball, where you begin to see the backing up of the bases, the double cuts, the game situations, things like that, and the value that it can offer not only young athletes, but families in general, getting to understand the inner workings of baseball at the higher level.
Yeah, knowledge is key, right? I think that in every facet of life, I think that is, no matter what job you have, no matter what sport you play, is if you're not watching the best of the best in what they do, or a level that's a little higher than you, and picking up on the littlest things of why they are elite at their level, that to me, it's hard in this generation because kids don't want to watch sports as much as we used to, and it's not their fault. The video games are awesome. Like they're so cool. Right. I mean, to be a parent saying, why are you playing these video games? You're not really getting it. Like, they're playing the video games because they are absolutely phenomenal and they are fun and exciting. Parenting is, all right, you get this much time. Hey, let's put down that. You got to take them out of those situations, right? And go watch, college baseball. You don't like college baseball is great for young kids too, because it's a step where, it's a step below the major leagues and minor leagues, and it has a good foundation too. More errors are made a little bit. So I also love for these kids to see errors at the higher levels, because I want them to understand that it's a part of the game. Striking out is a part of the game. Failure is a part of the game. And I think it's very important to take your kids to see these things in person, because they're not going to watch it at home, right? But you also realize too, as a coach, if you took a whole team to a game and you just sat and watched the kids, there's always going to be a handful of those kids that are more intent and focused on seeing the game. Those kids usually are your best players overall on your team, or their future like general managers that just really love the game. They don't have the talent. It weeds themselves out. But it really is a big deal to take your kids and to show them higher level baseball, and just let them see it, and have fun and the atmosphere involved with it, because that also builds their dreams, where maybe they see themselves out there one day playing on a college baseball field. If they never get to watch that, they're never going to have that dream and desire. But so, it's fascinating how times have changed. And I always say this: we cannot revert backwards. There's things that we love from, when we were younger. Right. Oh, it should be this way, that way. Now you're going to be the grumpy old man. Get off my lawn. You have to adjust, right? Everyone, there's a reason why Calipari is still coaching, right, in basketball. He's finding a way to connect. If you're not finding a way to connect to the new generation of how things are done, you're not really coaching. So you have to pick your battles. It's no different with your wife, your kids, all that stuff. There's certain battles you're like, I can't pick a battle here. And I think that's one of the number one battles that parents are missing, is it's never going to go back to the way it was. It's how do you make it better, utilizing the way it is now and just refining it and just filtering it out.
Well, I would be remiss if I didn't at least end on, because I had somebody ask me the other day, a guy that I grew up with, and we were talking about the 04 team and Uke, and he saw the Greek god of hops. And he's like, is Uke a basketball player? What's the whole hops thing? So can you just share? I know what it is because I follow what you guys are doing. What is the hops all about with regard to your new venture that you're doing now since you stopped playing?
Yeah, I wish I could say it was because I could leap out of a gym, but that's definitely not. I could jump enough, should I say? But no, Greek god of hops is a play on the Greek god of walks. That was the label given to me under the Moneyball book. And man, it was something that got tied to me, and it was tough at times because I'd have people tell me, hey, why don't you get a walk? And I'm like, get a walk? I want to get hit. But yeah, so I utilized that into my brewery that I opened, Loma Brewing Company in downtown Los Gatos, California. And we have an expansion project at Manteca, California, which is right next to Big League Dreams Ballpark, which is 6 replica travel fields. The Ripkins actually bought out the facility, are going to remodel it, but we share a parking lot there. We're hopefully going to be open by late summer, most likely. And so if you're ever out playing travel ball in Manteca, California, you won't miss it. It's right there to come and to have some good food, and for the adults to have a beer or wine and enjoy yourself with your travel ball teams. So yeah, that's my endeavor that I've been on after my playing career. Learned a lot. It's a very humbling experience being a small business owner, especially in California at times. But it's been a great adventure and an exciting time for me just to grow as a human being outside of the game of baseball. So yeah, Loma Brewing Company. It's lomabrew.com for anyone that's interested and you're out in California. Unfortunately, we don't ship our beer, and I tell people there's just not a lot of money in shipping beer across country to the New England area, or I would do it. But yeah, I said, if this was a charity, I would send it all day. But unfortunately, we got to keep those lights open and keep people employed. So only way you can get our beer is at our location in Los Gatos currently, and future. We have this expansion project that you can have at Manteca, and hopefully through this expansion, we'll be able to get out more beer to different areas where people can enjoy it.
Well, I know if you ever have anything coming out this way in Greater Boston, I'm a big fan. And I've been in Los Gatos when Tyler was with the Giants, spent many a day there. So I love it out there as well. But Kevin, thank you so much for taking the time to join me. I know you're a very, very, very busy businessman as well as a dad, but thank you very much for your time.
Oh, my pleasure. Yeah, good